Hello, this is Andrew from Hexacrafter. In this assembly video I will give an example of how our high amp bus bars are soldered. In this particular situation we have a prototype bus bar shown here. They're 1.5 millimeter thick solid copper, and this particular one's rectangular because it's prototype. The ones that are in production are actually shaped to fit the frame assembly and have a plastic cover that goes over them to protect any kind of short-circuiting. So in order to do this operation, you'll need a traditional electric soldering iron. This one is a 30-watt unit from Radio Shack. You'll need a rosin soldering flux of some sort. This is the tub version from Radio Shack. It also comes as a paste in a tube. You'll need a mini butane torch. These are available at Home Depot and online through multiple stores. A lot of chefs use these to melt the sugar on creme brulee, but basically it's a little mini butane torch. And you'll need a spool of rosin core solder and obviously some sort of clamping device to clamp the bus bar in. The bus bar in this particular case does not have any of the mounting hardware on it, none of the rubber grommets or the nylon standoffs or the aluminum standoffs. It's just a bare bus bar placed in the clamp so you don't melt any of the hardware. And then you have some of the devices that you want to solder to either the positive or the negative bus bar. In this particular case, let's say this would be the negative bus bar. I usually pre-tin all my wires before I solder them. So in this particular case, you can see that I've already applied solder to the tips of all these wires. That's basically done by dipping or applying some flux to the wires. Just pin it down in place for a second. And use the traditional electric soldering iron and apply some solder to the wires so that they have a nice coating to start with before we start the other soldering operations. And that's all pre-tinning. So with that done, you basically want to position all your wires in the bus bar that you can fit at a time. You may not be able to put all of the wires in at one time, but you should be able to come close. In this particular case, let's act as though it's a negative, and we're going to feed the negative wire from an ESC up in a position where it would traditionally be soldered on the inside of the bus bar where it goes through the frame. And it's always good when doing this to, find some sort of weight to hold what you're soldering in place so it doesn't move as you're trying to solder it. You don't want the wire falling out as you're trying to solder it. And the same thing's true on the other side. I'll act like these are, 3 or 4 other wires that are going to be applied to this bus bar. And again, you're going to need something to basically hold them in place, a clamp or some sort of weight to hold them in place so they don't move when you're soldering. So now with the wires positioned, I usually take a little mini screwdriver and put some flux on it. You want to coat the wires that are sticking up with some flux. And they're already pre-tinned, but the flux is what makes everything happen. When the heat's applied to it, it makes the solder flow properly, and it makes it happen very easily and very quickly for you. So I've got flux on all of those wires. There's 4 wires in there. This is when the mini butane torch comes in. This particular one, you just pull it down and push it, and you can see it's got a flame on it. And you take your solder, heat up the end of the wire until the solder starts to flow. And it only takes a second or two until that bus bar gets hot enough for that solder to start to flow. There it is. It flowed just nice and smooth. Once that bus bar gets hot, it all happens pretty quick, because that's the problem, is getting the copper hot enough to accept all the solder. Got that one a little hot on the wires. Let it cool for a second and you'll see that all that solder will set. The silicone wires really can take quite a bit of heat. You can see that the wires aren't really burned or anything. So with that in mind, you can see that the wires are all fully soldered in place, that the solder has flowed real nice over the bus bar. At this point, all you do is just take a pair of side cutters and cut off all the excess that's sticking through the bus bar. And there you have it, 4 wires soldered to the bus bar. And these will never come out. They're soldered in, they're very solid. It's a good solid solder joint. So that's how I do it. If you have any questions, let me know. Just be careful you don't apply too much heat all at one time and you know, start to burn the silicone off. I was in a bit of a rush to show this demonstration, but if you take your time, and that you can see that was pretty easy and pretty quick, you know, it happens fairly quickly. So thank you. I hope this helps. All right, bye.